As the world entered an unprecedented crisis, Magnus Carlsen and Chess24 acted quickly to create the first online chess tour of its kind. Working 24/7, we brought together the best players in the world for the largest online prize fund ever. Broadcast live in 10 languages, the tour innovated and filled the void created by the lack of in-person play, reaching more people than any online chess event ever. There was fun and laughter.
Okay, it's time for Russian hackers to attack internet in Norway. Last hope. Come on.
There was tension and controversy.
No, just make moves.
Yeah, and then give up the pawn.
This is
Okay.
hopeless. Anish is fast these days.
He
It's
even
interesting that-
resigned. Okay.
Okay, so we will have a fantastic match tomorrow, I'm sure. Jan is angry as hell now. But Anish also caught his rhythm, so let's see, it will be really fantastic.
There were instructive learning moments.
We have discovered e6 was a very strong move for Neopomia. She opens up the diagonal of the queen and at the same time shuts out the d5 bishop from the defense. Black has to play rook e7 to protect the pawn and the 7th rank, but now the queen comes from the f5, queen f2, threatening rook f7, and it's curtains. So the position is collapsing right now. Here, Black has to resign.
And there was lots of great chess.
Oh wow! It's really an incredible game, like showing how a completely lost position can gradually turn into a winning position if you just trade all the right pieces. This game is really a masterclass on the trades, what you should be trading on and what not. And when I said that trading the queens and the bishops is good for Black, I never imagined it would ever happen because it was so far away from that.
Wow.
And it's official
over.
resignation from Liren.
4 unique online events and a grand final made up the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour, and the world took notice. The Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour has been the most watched online chess event in history. Already it has become the world's most prestigious series of online tournaments. As the first season approaches its conclusion, we want your help to do something even bigger. Our partner for the tour final is Kiva, the non-profit with a mission to expand financial access to help underserved communities. Kiva does incredible work providing microloans to help people around the world create opportunity for themselves and their communities. When the pandemic started, Kiva set up a global COVID-19 response fund to help small businesses get back on their feet. Their target? To raise $50 million to support thousands of people around the world. Chess24 wants to help make that happen. During the tour's final, we will be donating 50% of all proceeds from new premium memberships to Kiva. Go premium, and you will not just be supporting us and getting the best chess entertainment out there, you will be supporting people in times of need through Kiva. And if you are premium already, you can buy sponsored premium memberships for schools in cities and countries of your choice in our shop. Let's show how chess can play its part together.
but this is the dream scenario. I think Magnus has a course, or he likes to state always having attack without sacrificing anything, and it seems to me like this is exactly the position that that illustrates that.
Did you consider rook f7 here?
Obviously, that's what I spent my time looking at. But I just felt that my position was so good that there was no reason to go for it unless I was sure it was winning.
Hello and a big welcome to all of you joining us for the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour benefiting Kiva final. I am delighted to be here with all of you to hang out with for all the chess action that's coming up, because today could potentially be Ding Liren's last day in his journey of the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour. Because take a look at this. Magnus, after losing the first set, bounced back with 2 straight set victories and now leads their match, leaving Ding Liren playing catch up to 2 sets. And essentially that means that Ding Liren is in a win on demand situation today. Otherwise, it's goodbye for him, and Magnus Carlsen makes it through to the finals. And of course, our other semi-final bracket was an absolute crash through by Hikaru Nakamura. Wrapped it up in 3 sets and in dominating style. Daniel Dubois was put through a blast furnace and did not survive that. I was expecting that match to be a lot more Daniel than what we saw, but Hikaru Nakamura, man, what a beast he is in these formats, in this time control, in online play, just all of it. And one thing that we are guaranteed is that regardless of who makes it to the finals, whether it's Ding or whether it is Magnus, it is going to be an absolutely epic and a fitting struggle. Let's take a look at the format of the event. So we have got, it's a 5-set match. Each set consists of 4 rapid games played in 15 minutes plus 10 seconds. If it's a tie, we get blitz. And if the blitz is a tie, it's a 5-minute plus 3-second blitz. And if that's a tie, then we go into the Armageddon. In the Armageddon, Magnus Carlsen will have the opportunity to pick colors because he qualified for the finals through a tournament win, while Ding Liren qualified, ironically, because Magnus Carlsen won the Legends of Chess, making Ding one of the highest cumulative scorers of the entire tour. Let's also take a look at what the players are fighting for. The semi-final losers will go back with $40,000, big prize fund there. And the runner-up, Hikaru Nakamura, is at least guaranteed of $80,000, but fighting for a lot more. And the winner of the entire tour will go back with $140,000. We had an immense day of chess yesterday, extremely exciting. I think Daniel Dubois, in a must-win situation, tried to create some chances, but really it was all a Hikaru Nakamura show. And in the match between Magnus and Ding, wrapped it up in 3 games. Did not need more than that. And we saw him do that in the second set as well. wrapping up the match in 3 games straight with a score of 2.5. We've seen one of the biggest qualities of Magnus has been in this entire tour, not just what we saw yesterday, really. One of the biggest qualities of Magnus Carlsen has been his flawless endgame technique. And he had an interesting conversation with Yas about that. Take a look at what he had to say.
What did you learn about the Chessable endgame that people can get for free?
I learned for once that I used to be extremely stubborn.
And now you became flexible, or what?
No, I think it was a good thing. Extreme stubbornness in trying to win games, right? And I think that's what the main takeaway. That even in very simplified positions, there are so many resources. But the thing is, you have to concentrate, you have to calculate, right?
Right.
Once you start relaxing, that's when your opponent pounces, either by making a draw they shouldn't have, or winning a game they should have drawn. So I think there's a lot to learn there, and I think it's also very useful for people to remember that endings they're very diverse. There's a lot of calculation. There's a lot of positional understanding, and there's a lot of theoretical knowledge you need as well. So it's really it's a diverse skill set you need to play endings well.
Wow, I think it's really incredible to hear the world champion talk like that, because he is definitely, in the current generation, perhaps the strongest player when it comes to end games. We've seen him convert positions which to mere mortals like us just look like there's nothing going on there, take his chances, find resources which are so difficult to even imagine that they exist. And a very interesting point made by him, that endings are so rich and complex and require calculation, concentration, because in chess, you slip for one moment and then your opponent gets away with that either half point or that full point. The good news for all of us is we might not be Magnus Carlsen, but we can learn from Magnus Carlsen, because there is a free lesson on Chessable that you can check out, Magnus Carlsen on Endgames. It's a brilliant lesson where the world champion takes us through one of his games from the 2013 World Championship match against Vishwanathan Anand, takes us through all the subtleties of endgame play, what it requires to truly improve and understand endings. A must watch, a must check out, and I cannot recommend it enough. And more good news, this is just a teaser, a taste of what's to come. It's got lots of exercises for all of us. It's got a true look into the world champion's mind while playing one of the most difficult aspects of our game, which is the end game. But tomorrow, the entire course, the Magnus Touch on Endgame releases, and I am very excited about that. But before that, definitely have a look at the free lesson that's on Chessable, that's live on Chessable right now. And also, let's take a look at, we've been talking a lot about the theme of this entire event, which has been Impact Chess, and how throughout the pandemic and in a very difficult time, chess has been this big impact and this big tool that has kept our sanity going and provided us with this amazing tour, really, that Chess24 and the world champion have put together, and how it's really impacted our lives, and how now Chess24 is extremely proud to support Kiva and use chess to impact community and give back to the community. So the bar that you see below me right now is the bar that tells us how much money the chess community, all of us, have raised for Kiva's campaign to raise money for businesses, for enterprises, for entrepreneurs, small businesses in underserved communities which have been hit badly by the pandemic. Kiva wants to raise money for them to help them survive the pandemic. And this bar tells us how much we have contributed to that cause. So keep that going. A big thank you to all of you who've not only invested in their own chess education by going premium, or perhaps bought it for their friends and families, or schools and kids that they know, but also contributed to the community. And it will have a big impact for all of us to come out better once this stupid pandemic is done. Because I can tell you, I'm done with it, and I'm looking forward to all the chess action now and to get back to over the board chess. But for now, of course, we have the finals coming up, and a big road for Ding Liren ahead. He has the monumental task. If he wants to make it to the finals, he needs to win 2 straight sets against the world champion. And you guys have been a big part of the entire event by sharing your impact chess stories with us, and continue doing that, continue connecting with us through Twitter and engaging with us so that we can bring up these stories and have a conversation and a chat about them on our show. Use the hashtag Impact Chess. Let's take a look at some of the conversations that caught our eye on Twitter. We had Sudarshan Jairam writing in, sweet revenge for Grandmaster Hikaru with a show of total domination against a young and talented Daniel Dubov, who had defeated him in the Linderer Abbey finals 2 months ago. Thank you. Thank you, Sudarshan, for writing in. And yes, yesterday we were speaking about this, that it was just all Hikaru. I just think if there's one player who deserves to be in the final, of course, given that Magnus has won 3 out of 4 events so far, besides Magnus, I would say it's Hikaru Nakamura. He has shown such consistency, such domination on this in this format. It's also not just been about how fast he plays, but his quality of play, his level of play has been absolutely world-class. So completely agree on that. I have to say that especially, we saw how Linderer's Abbey Rapid Challenge final went. I was expecting that to not be that easy for Hikaru, but he was just on beast mode this entire semifinal. And I think the turning point, this is something we've spoken about, was definitely that set 1, game 2, which was really Daniel's moment to shine, and that perhaps could have changed the bracket as we know it right now. But what's done is done. Congratulations to Hikaru for making it to the finals. Let's move on to our next tweet. We also, big shout out to William Marsh and for this amazing art that he creates. Definitely give him a follow to check out his stunning art that we have. And here we see the finalist Nakamura. Is it going to be Magnus Carlsen or is it going to be Ding Liren? Thank you so much, William, for all the effort you put into it. Every morning I wake up and I see this and it makes me smile. It's just fantastic. Definitely give William a follow. Shout out to William. Let's move on to the next one. It was by Mr. Dodgy. And this is according to Mr. Dodgy, who's been recently playing with the dark arts, as we can see, has leaked some footage of Ding's preparation. Well, I am speechless on that, and I can see that so far it probably hasn't worked that well. But yes, Mr. Dodgy, I'm speechless. And there we have another one, more dark arts by Mr. Dodgy. There's voodoo everywhere. Fair and balanced. He had Magnus up first, and then he had Ding Liren because he's got to keep it even. I have to say that perhaps this one's worked a little more. Ding Liren is down 2 sets, and then we heard more from Mr. Dodgy, I think, just completely going into it. And I have to say, Mr. Dodgy, I don't think this is your calling. I don't think voodoo and all this stuff is your calling, because if you think about it, the only player who you left out, Daniel Dubov, he's not with us anymore in this entire chess tour. So I'm really not sure if this is what you should be. It's let's just say that this is not what you're meant for. I don't think it's working out. Risking my life here. And then Carnicero writing in with, I will pay big money to see this tweet on the show. Carnicero, I will send you my bank details. Please send all that money across to me. And of course, but I have to say, shout out to Mr. Dodgy, definitely one of the 3 top chess accounts that you need to follow, edging out Magnus Carlsen on that list, according to me. Just kidding, but it's not all voodoo and dark arts in there. There's also, if you look carefully, you might find some horses in there on Mr. Dodgy's Twitter account. And here we have it. Well, you know what they say, you get what you give out. And thank you guys for all that entertainment that you provide for us. It's absolutely, it's really funny, and really, it's interesting to see all the stuff that you come up with. Michael writing in with, when I subscribe to Daz and Canada, I did not expect to watch chess, but the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour finals have been absolutely riveting. Terrific commentary. Thank you, Michael, for writing in. Daz and Canada, for those of you who might not know, it's not, for example, it's not available in India, is something like a Netflix, but for sports. So if you're a sports addict and you enjoy sports a lot, you can watch all the shows. I think there's a lot of focus on fight sports as well as football and chess as well. And yes, you're absolutely right, Michael. And I think we've seen this narrative throughout the year while all sports came to a halt and everything was stopped. Chess kept it alive. Chess, while the world got more and more solitary and people went more and more indoors, I think chess was the tool that brought everyone together from their homes. And it's been amazing like that. And that does continue. And again, a big shout out to Chess24 and the world champion for putting up this incredible tour together in a very difficult time. And also a big shout out to them for supporting at the very end, the very final stage, an incredible cause to help businesses survive a very difficult time and to help them come out of the pandemic. And we had Dwight replying with the Pac-12 canceling, postponing. You might be watching chess all fall. Yes, we've been talking about this because, of course, the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour, we're at the final leg of the journey. After this, we just have the finals in a few more days of this tour, but the action on Chess24 does not stop. There's a lot more coming up. And I can guarantee you guys that there's a lot of chess to look forward to. Again, just you all make it possible. Whatever's put together is for all of us as a community to take it in. But if you enjoy it and you've enjoyed the broadcast and you support the tour and you support the chess community, consider going premium because that's what enables us to do what we are doing. Do we have more on Twitter? Yes, we do. And Edward writing in with today's Impact Chess Clash brings Liren and the Chinese Dragon versus Thor's Hammer. I love it. Magnus Carlsen, who will prevail? I expect a big fight today. Cannot wait for more exciting chess. I cannot wait for more exciting chess. So this is the perfect time to get in our chess experts into the conversation because I can see on my Zoom call that Yas and Peter are with us. Edward, you are totally right. Today is going to be an epic battle because Ding has to bring in everything he's got to the table today. It's now or never. Magnus Carlsen needs one win to advance to the finals. Ding Liren must win on demand. Yes, Peter, welcome.
Thank you, Tanya. As always, a pleasure to be with you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm delighted, of course, to be here to call the action with colleague and friend Peter Leko. Hi, Peter.
Yeah, hi Yasser, hi Tanya. Nice to be here. It's the fourth day of the semifinals and we have a very, very important match coming up because Ding Liren has to fight for his life.
I could not have put that better than fighting for his life, Peter. Yes, what do you predict in today's, as far as openings and style of play is concerned? Do you think that Ding is going to stick to his classical strategic positional way of playing, or are we going to see an all-out version of Ding going for the knight-offs and the more combative play?
I think the latter, Tanya, because it seemed to me that coming into the match, Ding moved away from his usual repertoire of knight f3, d4. He's a great Catalan player. And instead, he's adopted a very combative approach, as you said, with 1e4. The fact that he trails in the match makes me question whether his strategy was right. But guess what? He won day one. He knows he's got the game to beat Magnus. He just needs to take advantage of his opportunities. And Peter, that game, that set yesterday, that where he played a3 and Magnus turned the tables with bishop takes a3, that was a harsh blow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I fully agree with you that we have seen that Ding Liren was somehow experimenting too much with his openings. Maybe it was also encouraged by the fact that he won the very first game of their match with e4 and he won it with an ease. And looking back, it might feel like Magnus just lured him into this territory that please, you are welcome, play e4, play all these Najdorfs, and then Liren even went on to play with white and with black the Najdorf, and we had seen some incredible clashes yesterday. And what struck me was that whenever finally this time trouble phase was coming, then somehow Magnus was feeling better himself in this double H position because he had simply more experience. And in this regard, yes, one can argue that Ding needs to create a mess in order to pose Magnus trouble. But on the other hand, if he's not feeling comfortable with the mess with little time on the clock, then maybe some classical positions where he can build confidence move by move is eventually the right strategy. But in this respect, I think first game is already very, very important because Magnus has the white pieces, and Ding has to make sure that he survived this game if he wants to have a chance winning today's match.
Yes, indeed, Peter. I think first game is definitely going to set up the tone for today. You know, I don't know how you feel about this, Yas and Peter, but it was coming to my mind because I was thinking about this match, that the one match that Ding did win in the first set of their matchup, there were some technical issues that had played a role in that. And we had Magnus come in and speak about it as well, that how that threw him off a little bit. And I just feel that if all of that does not happen, it's extremely hard for Ding, because the last two matches that we've seen have been all Magnus Carlsen wrapping it up in 3 games. It's not even gone to the 4th game. Now we know that in over-the-board chess and with their matchups in the past, these two have an epic rivalry, and Magnus never has it easy. He just never does. And Ding has, in fact, come on top several times in their matchups. But I have to say that in this online format, and online chess has proven throughout this tour to be a completely different animal from over-the-board chess. I have to say that not just the scoreboard-wise, but Magnus Carlsen is a big favorite in his match against Ding Liren, which is a very different story when they play over the board.
Yes, it has been. And again, I think at the start of the show, Tanya, you were explaining how the format really favors a player like Hikaru, who literally grew up online. And he played Blitz endlessly, thousands and tens of thousands of hours, it feels like, online Blitz. And the format has in some ways kind of favored Magnus too. Magnus is a phenomenally good Blitz player and rapid player. So these formats, you know, I hate to say it, but they really do favor 2 players specifically, our world champion Magnus Carlsen and Hikaru. Now, having said that, Ding, at the number 3 player in the world in classical chess, defeated Magnus in a playoff. So again, he's got the game to win. And what you said was so true, Tanya. I can't help but remind everybody that during a technical glitch, Magnus returned the point. He played Queen G5 takes D2, lost the game because he refused to go ahead due to a technical fault. And sorry, Peter, you couldn't get in a word edgewise there, but the game's underway.
We do have liftoff, and I'm going to leave the floor to Yas and Peter to take us through the action. But a quick reminder to our viewers that you can that we are keeping an eye out on the Chess24 chat, and you can connect with us on Twitter using the hashtag ImpactChess. Share your Impact Chess stories with us. But for now, enjoy the game.
Thank you, Tanya. And we do have liftoff, Peter.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that we're going to enjoy this game big time because we are seeing an opening confrontation between the 2 players, which I have been really looking forward to see in their match. And so far, we haven't had a chance during these finals because this is exactly the line with which Magnus Carlsen delivered a terrible blow in the Legends tournament against Ding Liren. And I was wondering when Ding will get back to his main opening, and let's see what he prepared.
Absolutely. Well, this is probably one of the most, I want to say, difficult theoretical territories for any chess grandmaster. This Bob Vinnick pawn sacrifice, which is now like the Moscow variation, and Ding has just challenged Magnus directly with the move b4. The knight was pushed away. Knight went to a4. And after knight left the scene, knight takes e4, grabbing the center pawns. And I got to tell you, that's about as direct a challenge as black could make, Peter.
Yeah, on the other hand, I'm really curious to see how deep Liren has prepared all this variation, because it does not have a good reputation. And basically, if you play b5, b4 yourself, it must indicate that you are coming with a surprise, and you must have checked this position very deeply, otherwise you will end up in trouble. And in this respect, I'm also very curious to see how deep Magnus's preparation will go, because this line is simply supposed to be nice for white with lovely compensation. And once you know that it's a lovely compensation, you think like, okay, my opponent anyway will never play this line. Mm-hmm. And secondly, if they play, then I will handle it over the board.
Okay, and well, now you set the table so very well. Where is the lovely compensation?
Yeah, the compensation is basically based on the fact that black has no safe shelter for his king. I mean, look at this pawn on g5. It basically already guarantees that whenever black castle short, his king will also not feel very safe. Black right at this moment is 2 pawns up, but okay, the pawn on c4 is gonna fall any minute. So in this regard, one can only think about one pawn and also a damaged pawn structure from black. So white has all the reasons in the world to claim very nice compensation. And knight c5, c3 had been blitzed out by Liren.
Exactly. As you mentioned, there was a 2-pawn advantage. Magnus could have played bishop takes c4, reducing his deficit by 1 pawn right away. He chose the move knight c5 first, because I was thinking that exactly, Peter, that knight b8 to d7 and hack that bishop on e5 off the board. And therefore, I understand completely Magnus's move knight c5. He wants to maintain his bishop on that beautiful e5 square.
Exactly. I mean, knight c5 is a very classy move. But it's also the move I believe you anticipate as black, and yeah, Ding has blitzed out c3. I wonder where this will lead, because if I would be sure that this is not preparation, the players just got here by accident, maybe somebody threw a dice and they had to start from this moment, I would say that white player is a clear favorite. But I mean, knowing that this was entered voluntarily by Ding, changes my perspective to the position.
Right. And again, these two very greatest chess players in the world, you got to assume that Ding Liren's preparation is going to be really, really on point today. In other words, he's playing a side variation, which, as you just said, Peter, yourself, a lot of players don't want to play as black. Therefore, he could be surprising Magnus, and hopefully his preparation is really up to it, because he's 2 pawns up, and Magnus has to prove the position is full compensation. How do you see it currently after the move c3, I mean to say?
Yeah, I actually don't know exactly what to say. I think we have to wait for the next couple of moves to clarify the situation, because without knowing what engine thinks about this position, it's very difficult, because we can generally explain why white has such a lovely position. On the other hand, let's not forget, yeah, the pawn on c3 might fall, but it will still take white some time to collect this pawn. And right. Meanwhile, of course, I believe black wants to go bishop g7, try to play knight bd7, exchange this powerful knight on c5, and then if he has a chance to relatively safely castle. Why I say relatively safely, because I believe that once white castles himself, then all these ideas with h2, h4 will not be so dangerous anymore. On the other hand, also the white king on e1 does not feel so safe, so I'm expecting Magnus sooner or later to castle. And once black gets all these moves in and gets rid of the knight on c5, even if he had lost the pawn on c3 in the meanwhile, then still he's pawn up, which is not the main point, but also how is white really going to generate the very strong, very dangerous initiative.
Exactly. I was in Bonn, Germany, 2008. I think that was right, for the this Swanathan Anand Vladimir Kramnik World Championship match. And crazily enough, that World Championship match was decided in this variation as Vichy won with the black pieces. And you were mentioning how after h6 g5, by advancing his pawn shield, black's king on the king side isn't going to feel too safe. And I remember in that match that somehow Vichy's king, when it got over to the king side, it was very hard for Vladimir just to go over there and sack it. So yeah, it's one of those variations in chess that you just need to prepare really deeply. And I'm very curious to see how deep the players have prepared, because again, I'm expecting that Magnus has been surprised, whereas Ding has prepared for this position. We're about to find out. We did see knight d7, by the way, Peter.
Yeah, we have seen quite a lot of things. So finally, Magnus followed, as we discussed, with short castle. Knight b7 was played before playing bishop g7, because most probably it was very, very important to eliminate this knight as quickly as possible. The knight takes d7, bishop takes d7. These knights were exchanged. Magnus followed it up with queen b3. And look at this. I mean, what a speed. Queen b3, bishop g7 blitzed out, and now also queen a3 played.
Wow.
But Ding Liren has 5.5 minutes time advantage.
Exactly. And that I don't find to be surprising, because again, it's this, side variations, and how deep can you prepare? When I think about the Sveshnikov, for example, it's such a complex variation with so many branches. And if I can prepare deeply one specific I want to say large branch, whereas my opponent has to, prepare everything, I feel I have some advantage. Now, this move, queen a3, makes it very clear. The compensation is simply black's king ain't going anywhere, certainly not to the king side. That's the intention of queen a3. How do you, exactly, that was the question I wanted to ask. Queen e7, bishop d6, and I go backwards with the queen. Right?
Yeah, but this already indicates that probably you would never really play queen e7. You just ask the question in order to clarify it for the public. Yeah, because if white gets a tempo like bishop d6 in, and then the white knight might join the party to e5,
right?
This is feeling too dangerous.
Exactly.
So, but the question is how to deal with it. Keeping the king in the center is not ideal. The main problem that the bishop on g7 is hanging, black cannot really move his knight because it's pinned. And in this respect, maybe then black has to insist on playing bishop f8 and maybe just give the pawn and go back and threaten with short castle. That's maybe one idea, or something like c6, c5, sacrificing the pawn in order to disbalance white. It's another option.
And that's the move has got my attention exactly, Peter. c6, c5. And you mentioned it's a little bit awkward sometimes. White has to spend some time just scooping up the pawn on c3. So I'm thinking if you play queen takes c5, insisting, no, you can't castle, that after rook c8, at least this pawn on c3 could present counterplay for black.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, suddenly your rook is alive. The white queen will not find it so easy to have a nice square. I mean, earlier this queen a3 was brilliant, but also it feels like getting rid of the c6 pawn was a big relief for black, because suddenly his bishop can also join the play with bishop c6. I think the real question after c5 is that what happens if white simply just takes d takes c5, because let's not forget that black is not up too much materially, and let's just imagine that you castle and white will collect on c3. We already material equal territory, and white has all the trumps with his better pieces, and still the somewhat weakened king size structure from black.
Okay, so continue that variation, if you will, Peter. D takes c5, castles short. I mean, I would think that I'd be very relieved, let's say, to get the king out of the center. Now, queen takes c3. I do have the tempo knight d5, which may help me, let's say, ease some of the annoying pressure that white certainly has. Queen d4, yeah. And if just picking a move, for example, I don't know, f6, let's just say. Bishop
f6, then I think I get control with bishop d6. You know what I was wondering, that
Please.
Do you have some crazy ideas like knight f4?
Ooh, tricky.
Yeah, using the fact that we're always blaming black's weakened kingside pawn structure, but now exactly thanks to this pawn on g5, we have this nice intermediate move which might bring new dynamics to the situation.
Yeah, making a virtue out of this advanced g5 pawn. At least I do feel that c5 is a move you definitely want to consider. He didn't play queen e7. I was like, no, don't do it. The other thing I wanted to ask is this pawn on c3. It's kind of funny because it's awkward for the knight. The knight on f3 really wants to jump to e5, but that square is already occupied. If black plays some crazy move like g4, the knight is going to have to go to a bad square, right, Peter?
That's a very good point, and maybe this is exactly why Liren hasn't made up his mind yet, because this g5, g4 is quite a nice toss. The big question is, on the other hand, where does this lead? Because white has a move like knight e1, and the knight is heading towards c5 via d3, and probably g4 you have to connect anyway with the idea c6, c5, because you have to break this structure, yeah?
Right. So now comes c5, and maybe there's some differences, key differences with the other variation.
Doesn't need to win, just trades the bishops. Yeah, I mean, just absolutely picture perfect by Ding.
It's no longer on f3.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point, because often in all these anti-Moscow variations, the number of pawns is not the decisive factor. The factor is whose pieces will finally be more active in the right moment.
Right.
And in this sense, this g4, knight e1, c5 is a very interesting idea.
Yes, it seems to be combining two things. Now, again, as far as I am concerned, Peter, after surprising his opponent with b4, knight a4, knight takes e4, bishop e5, knight f6, we're really in Ding's preparation. I'm sure Ding Liren considered knight c5. And again, I've got to figure out before g4 and before c5, all of this was on Ding's, let's say, study, in his study. And he's taking so long, so I'm finding it a little bit confusing. Your take on what he could be considering?
Yeah, I think that simply his preparation has stopped. The point is that when you are coming up with such a surprise like b4, and now finally g5, g4 had been played, so your move, Yasser, is on the board. What I wanted to mention, that we don't know whether Ding Liren was happy to play this variation with b5, b4, or it came out of desperation, because this is another scenario, like he might have wanted to improve the play that he played against Magnus in the Legends, but finally in the last moment he felt like, no, it's too dangerous, I'm not happy and I'm not ready there. And Magnus probably expects that, and he knows it better. And in this sense, out of desperation, he chose an emergency exit with the line b5, b4. And that's why he's not that deeply prepared. Or there is another scenario that simply after playing this line b5, b4, white has so many different alternatives. And when you are looking and analyzing with the computer brings so many new ideas to the position that often the most simple or most human ways you can easily miss in your preparation because you are simply overloaded with all the engine suggestions.
Intriguing, because that was actually one of the areas I really was hoping to probe with you, Peter, because I'm sure so many people watching our broadcast have that exact question: how to best use the computer so that, you know, it doesn't overwhelm you, right? Like, I mean, you want to prepare using the computer, but you want to understand the ideas behind the moves, and you want to direct the computer in a certain way. So sometimes if you just leave the computer on, you can get lost in some kind of maze. So at some point I'm going to ask you, like, how do you use your computer, and how do you recommend for amateurs? Now, in the meanwhile, we have seen the move G4, Peter, and you basically said knight E1 and stop. You didn't consider knight H4. Why?
Yes, somehow simply this move knight E1 is so natural because I want to get to C5, and I feel like the knight on H4 is not doing that much since I have no entry points. Okay, if there would be a nice way to sacrifice the knight on F5 somewhere and make use of the E5, but it looks basically illusionary, not real. So knight E1 is the natural move, and Liren had followed it up with C5.
Right.
So everything in the spirit. Magnus took it with d takes C5, and black has castled.
And again, a major relief for black. I always say in the opening, you have only 3 goals. You want your fair share of the center, you want effective development, squares for your pieces, and you want to save king. Now, in reviewing who has succeeded in those goals best, Peter, how would you summarize the outcome of the opening thus far?
Well, actually, the position is so complex that I'm not sure if I can evaluate it. I can better explain what are the trumps. And
Please.
Magnus has played bishop takes c3, so basically he wants to make sure that the knight will never jump with the tempo. But the point is that one of the big extras, let's say like this, big achievement for black with g5, g4, as you mentioned, that the knight was kicked away from f3, and the white knight is not able to land on e5, and this gives black the chance of placing his bishop on the lovely square c6. And with bishop c6, I feel like, okay, if it's black to move, black would just play queen d5 and would have a fantastic position. So clearly bishop c6 will be met by the very unpleasant rook d1 when you have to leave the d file. And probably that's the reason why Ding hasn't played bishop c6 yet, looking for any alternatives. But everything is based on tempo, because if black is in time to get active, then he will be perfectly fine. But if white will have time to bring his knight from e1 to, let's say, dc to e5 or to some other square, then long terms, black's kingside pawn structure can be an issue.
Exactly. And just as you're describing it, one of the things that in the position really kind of sits out like a sore thumb for me is this pawn on g4. You know, the old adage, pawns don't move backwards. You know, you almost feel like I'd like to play g4, g5. You know, in his really magnificent book, Zurich 1953, David Bronstein explained that a pawn on g4 is like a sewing needle that pulls a thread behind it. And that in this case, you know, black almost feels a kind of an obligation to play h6, h5, you know, further, you know, pulling his pawn structure forward. Because I think in some ways, black, as you were mentioning, wants to play bishop c6 and jump with the knight, and I don't know, queen f6 and get his pieces going. And he needs to do that rather quickly because, as you're pointing out, rook d1, knight d3, knight e5, you know, I can see those moves, and I want to see how black counters them.
You know, I feel like you are a magician, Yasser, you know, because you mentioned this move h6, h5, and I thought, wow, yes, it's very nice. Of course, you have to explain the public, yeah, that after g4, h6, h5 is natural. But to my mind, I was even thinking while listening to you that this will never happen, you know. And exactly at that moment, like a couple of seconds later, Ding himself went h5. Okay, now I also got the point that, yeah, of course, black wants to go knight d5 because this rook d1 move was so irritating. And already these moves had been played. Magnus blitzed out rook d1, and Ding has instantly replied it with knight d5. That's why he had to put an extra guard on the g4 pawn. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7 also on the board. Interesting development.
Exactly. And again, now you can understand me why I'm always complaining to the engineers at Chess24 that the players can't hear the commentators. They cannot hear the commentators. And they keep reassuring me that's the case. Yes, big developments. And okay, now it's a free-for-all, fight for squares. The knight on d5, I'm sure, you know, Liren just wants to play queen g5 sooner. Queen g5, queen f6, and bring his rooks and bishop to c6. White quickly just wants to go, like, I don't know, knight d3 to e5. Maybe on a good day, even f2, f3 comes to mind, Peter. What's your take?
Yeah, there are many ideas. One of the most dangerous things in rapid chess, yeah, because if it would be, there would just be a clear-cut way, it would be so nice because you would be able to blitz them out. Right. But yeah, here there are really a lot of things to calculate, to think about, because on one hand, as you mentioned, white wants to go knight d3, knight e5, but if after knight d3, black, for example, with queen f6 or with queen g5 nicely neutralizes this knight jump, then it might be premature to lose a tempo on knight d3 move. And this position feels like it's very much move pair move. I mean, the tempo plays a very important role. And in this regard, it's now very nice that it's white to move. He might be able to call the shots, but if he misses the direction, then black might take over.
Exactly. By the way, in terms of time, let me just double check. It does feel like Ding has won the sweepstakes on the clock. Now, if you've mentioned in their matchups that when Magnus is significantly behind, I mean, 2 minutes, he's down to 2 minutes, Ding has got 4 or more minutes. Magnus plays so well, he seems to catch up on the time, and in fact the clock hasn't been a major factor. Normally for me, Peter, I'm one of those guys, I feel happier when I'm ahead on the clock. In other words, when I have more time than my opponent. But in this match, it hasn't been a key feature of the match.
Yeah, but I also experienced myself that having more time on the clock is, of course, very important in this, in general, already in rapid play anyway, but in online chess, I feel that it's even more important, because I have the feeling that while you have time, it's kind of almost no difference if you are playing online chess or you are playing over the board chess. But when suddenly the clock ticks down, unless you have some incredible experience like Hikaru or Magnus, for example, personally, I felt quite difficult to control the happenings over the board. And whenever I would make a move, suddenly I would be like shocked that how on earth did this cross my mind at all? Yeah, if it would be over the board, I would definitely not make this move. Somehow you are distracted, but we have seen from Magnus and also all these other top players that they are already very much into this online, and I think that's one of the reasons why we hardly see big mistakes, or we see very high quality even with very little time. And that's why we have the impression that actually time is never really impacting the players. But if I can say something, I felt like the reason why Fabiano became so much better now in this online rapid format and blitz format was that he was managing his clock so much better than earlier. And if we look back at the tournament that you had been broadcasting from St. Louis, the clutch, then I remember that Fabi was all of a sudden almost having like 8 minutes on the clock in a position where like half a year before, I think he would have had clearly less than 5 minutes.
Exactly. He definitely sped up his play. Now, I'm seeing some incredible accuracy, I believe, by Magnus. I really liked his move bishop c4, Peter, and following it up, especially with knight c2 and not knight d3, is now that bishop on c6 that you were mentioning, is on this lovely diagonal. I mean, it's become a target. And as you're pointing out, white is ready to play either knight d4 or knight d4. And I can almost imagine a major piece endgame scenario coming up where, something like rook c8, you take the bishop and you take the knight on d5, and before you know it, you're in a major piece endgame coming up. But Ding, recognizing that major piece endgame is not favorable for him, he has played knight e7, Peter.
Yeah, he's trying to get the harmony, but it seems like, Magnus has played the move f2, f3. So Magnus combined all the ideas in the position, and we see how nicely he had brought all his pieces to ideal squares, putting pressure. And I do believe that Black was missing somehow this extra half tempo, because it was not just one tempo, it was less than that. It was a half tempo that he was missing, and White seized the initiative. So it will be very difficult for Black to keep everything together now.
Wow. And, again, I'm a fanboy, but this is really nice. I mean, it seems like Magnus always somehow he manages to use his trumps, and he plays his cards just perfectly. This move f2, f3, what a break. I mean, the timing couldn't be more on point, as now that Black's queen is on f6, it's facing a tempo against the rook on f1. Suddenly, it feels like Black's position's falling apart.
Yeah, it's very dangerous, and Ding has played the positional sacrifice. Okay, positional tactical, I don't know how to call it, but basically he felt like the tempo is more important than the pawn, and he has to keep this files closed on the king side. And after g3, a take g3, he plays rook fd8. He wants to hit the knight on d4. And it seems like if White would prematurely take on c6, we have been talking about this powerful bishop, but all of a sudden this structure, maybe this blockading knight and all the dark squares, including the d4 square, which the Black knight can occupy, would give Black quite good compensation. I mean, at least definitely practical chances to create counterplay. So in this sense, I feel like something like queen e3 is so much more natural from White's side not to exchange this powerful knight.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Queen e3, the queen on a3 did a very, very good job when it landed there. The queen on a3 was on the diagonal, a3 to f8, limiting, preventing Black's king from castling. Now centralizing the queen with a move like queen e3 and bringing... it's strange. When we started this whole discussion, Black was 2 pawns up. Over the course of the last 15 moves, it's like he's given back 3 pawns. That's quite unusual that you go from a gambit position 2 pawns up to 1 pawn down. Rather a big surprise for me. By the way, he took on c6. I thought that was premature. I liked your logic that you were saying there, Peter, but he did it and he said, look, I'm a pawn up, so what's the problem? And maybe Magnus is right, Peter.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm still a little bit surprised that why you do this, but Magnus, knowing Magnus, he probably has his own ideas. The point is that and knight d4 had been answered by g4 from Magnus. So maybe he's following a very, very concrete approach. He said that Yes, but if black is not able to make good use of this d4 square, that's what I was also afraid of, that this knight on d4 is disturbing. But this g3, g4 with the threat of g4, g5, kicking away the queen on f6, which protects the knight on d4, then all of a sudden the knight on d4 will feel very loose. And maybe this is just some very nice judgment by Magnus.
Yeah, it looks like a great tactical opportunity there, this move g4. Not the first move that comes to your mind. It's like you're really very happy holding your extra c5 pawn, and you're thinking to yourself, your king is nicely protected, pawns on g2, g3, f3, and then you just have to change that mentality from like your king is secure enough, play for the win, go for the attack, g4, g5, and he did it. And whoa, this is a surprise, Peter. Ding Liren ignored the threat of g5?
Yeah, he ignored because first of all, he couldn't do anything against it. Secondly, he spotted some very nice tactical counter resource. So basically, I'm expecting probably, if I'm not blundering anything, the whole idea is based on something like queen f5, rook takes d4, queen takes c5 pin.
Wow.
And and queen f5 played. It's not so easy to get out of this. And if you play rook fd1, I might have the move e5.
E5 and pins galore suddenly. There's a pin on the d file, there's a pin against the queen, and that looks...
Yeah, and we have rook takes d4, queen takes c5 on the board.
Can he play bishop takes e6, Peter?
Yes, probably.
I have to see what I'm blundering as well. Like it suddenly became like super sharp. At a moment it looked like some nice positional considerations after queen e3, but now it's blown up, and I'm just trying to, at the end of the day, keep some material advantage.
Yeah, bishop takes e6, very nice. I have to take it back, I guess.
Right. And
now you can unpin yourself with rook e4.
Precisely.
And probably I have nothing else. I have to go for some rook endgame and hope for my activity with rook d2.
Nice. Exactly. Rook d2, just in time to double the rooks on the second rank.
Yes, you cannot stop it with rook f2, and you cannot really take on e6. Yeah, bishop takes e6 had been played. Rook e6 runs into rook cc2, so probably you have to make a move like king h2, and this is something that bothers me a bit. Rook cc2 can be answered then by rook g1.
Right, great activity for black, but still a material advantage for white.
Exactly, and the pawn structure is very nice for white in long term. So any 3 versus 2 or any rook endgame, even where you collect the a2 pawn, but I get active in the meanwhile, can be very, very dangerous for black.
In your judgment, would this ending, because they appear to be going in this direction, by the way, Peter, would this ending be winning for Magnus? And let me again boldly state the obvious. Magnus Carlsen is on the verge of getting to the finals. He needs to win today's set or even tomorrow's sets, whereas Ding Liren, he's do or die. He has to win the set of games today. They'll be playing 4 rapid games, or rather the first player to 2.5. And as you said at the start of today's game, game 1, playing with the black pieces was so crucial, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I sense simply the point was that Ding wants to play his chess, but Magnus is not giving him the opportunity to play his chess. And then I felt like all these big experimenting issues were also combined with the fact that Ding was not sure if he plays his lines, he will not get into trouble. And then he felt like maybe coming up with surprises right from the beginning might be a better practical chance or better practical idea against Magnus. I mean, this is a very nice illustration from Magnus, yeah, that how he deals with any surprise, if this surprise comes against something he believes in, yeah, because he believes in the anti-Moscow variation from the white side that, yes, I'm sacrificing a pawn for initiative. and I'm ready in the main lines. And if you are going to some sidelines, please do so. Let me see if you're going to enjoy yourself or not.
Exactly. And speaking of enjoying himself, Magnus Carlsen has, against the move rook c6, got himself into a rook and pawn endgame, Peter, where he's material ahead, pawns ahead. And as we know, that's not a nice way of spending your afternoon, trying to hold an inferior ending against this world champion, Magnus Carlsen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I also realized meanwhile that, we had been talking and we were carried away with all these lines, but after fe6, white could also now play rook fd1 because e5 doesn't work anymore thanks to the open 7 rank with rook d7. And if you have to take rook d4, then I'm gonna end up in some endgame anyway, which is clearly better and much easier than what I was showing where black was getting contra chances in the double rook endgame.
Very important point. So that was why we saw rook c6 instead, and wouldn't you know it, they're in a rook and pawn endgame, which just absolutely dovetails with what is happening today in our show, as it's free endgame lessons time, everybody. Go to chessable.com, sign up, and get a free endgame course, a 20-minute lesson by Magnus Carlsen, and you can get a taste of a endgame course that is going to be released tomorrow. So the price is right, a free endgame lesson on the endgame by Magnus Carlsen. And I have to tell you, you mentioned it a moment ago, this 3 versus 2, or if you want to call it 3 versus 1, this looks tragically bad for black. I just don't think that there's any chances of holding this endgame, Peter.
Yeah, fully agreed. I mean, rook endgames are famous for their big margin of drawing chances. However, usually those chances are based on very healthy structures from the weaker side. But being pawn down and having the worst pawn structure, and Magnus immediately activating his king with king h2, he will make sure that whenever black plays king g6, he's simply gonna protect it with rook e5. And if he gets then king g3, king h4, and some f4, g3 setup, then it's just a question of time when he will win this position.
Exactly. Rather plays itself. The only thing I can imagine from a defensive perspective is Peter, rook a6, hoping that maybe one day I can trade the e6 pawn for the a2 pawn. So I'm imagining f4, for example. Rook takes, well, I don't know, f4, do I? Yeah, I'm thinking, I'm torn between king f7 and rook takes a2. But let me just first say rook takes a2, Peter. I guess these two connected pass pawns are just terrifying, right?
Yeah, I think this is just hopelessly lost without any practical chance. So you have to go king f7, as you mentioned. Of course, you want to protect your e6 pawn because it's not just about the pawn, but thanks to this pawn, the white rook is less active and a little bit cut out of the game.
Okay.
And how I will deal with this a2 pawn, because I don't want to return to e2. Okay, I can, but it gives you the chance of activating your rook with rook a3, cutting off my king. Of course, I can play g3 and then king h3, king h4 are still there, and it looks very, very promising. But still, you feel like maybe you can be even more precise. And Magnus has started with the move f4.
Not rook a5, but rook e5, pardon me, but a4. Good morning, everyone. F4. Okay. I was reluctant to make that suggestion for the obvious reason, Peter. I didn't want to see king f5. Was f4 a good move?
Well, I think if Magnus has done it, then it should be a good move, but rook e5 looked much more natural. On the other hand, if Magnus knows already that king f5 is not an issue, then he might think that he anyway needs the move f4. So yeah, let's check what could happen after king f5.
So I like the way you were describing that. So if Magnus makes the move, then it's probably good. if your student makes the move, then you are going to explain to them they should play rook e5 first. Very nice. So it depends on who's playing the move. Okay, got it. Okay, king f5. What's going to happen, Peter?
Yeah, king f5 played. Of course, it's the only chance. And now the big question is also, white has ideas like activating the king, like king g3, and saying that, okay, give me this check. It looks like you achieve something. But in fact, after king h4, king takes f4, king takes h5, the g pawn might just march, and you will not be able to stop it. And king g3 on the board.
Ah, I like that variation. I also like taking on e6 in that line too. Rook d3 check, king h4, king f4, rook e6. That looks like a really great munch, because you're keeping all the pluses that white has in the position, and you got rook f6 check and chasing the king away, and suddenly it's all good. And we've seen h4 check, king takes f4. Okay, Ding is fighting for his life, and he's trying to get a past e-pawn, Peter.
Yeah, but okay, now just to check on the f5, we look f1 check, and I believe it's kind of game over territory. Magnus even goes g6. It's another indication that the position is so much winning that you don't even need a move like rook f1 check.
And I thought rook f1 check was very clean. The king had to move to the e file, and then after g6, you're going to go king g5, g7, and rook f8. He's basically done it. It's game over. What a start for the world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was such a nice position and show illustration of strengths that rook f1 check could be played in one move later. So yeah, and Liren has resigned. It's 1-0 for Magnus today.
Wow, frightening, because again, if you just go to the opening after knight takes e4 and knight f6, I mean, it was like from that moment onwards, Peter, I mean, did Magnus make any mistake? I mean, it's like right here, right? I mean, this is all preparation by Liren, and Magnus said, ha ha ha, I've either seen this at home myself. I'm going to play knight c5, and I know my position is great compensation. And Magnus played flawlessly. I mean, I'm sorry, again, I'm a fanboy, but this was really impressive, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely, it was impressive. But also from my side, I know that sometimes there are surprises and there are pleasant surprises. This one probably was a pleasant surprise, and we have Tanya with us. Tanya, please.
Thank you, Peter. And you and Yas are absolutely right that despite this being such an offbeat opening, especially the move c3 that he went for in that position instead of knight d7, which has been played a couple of times, Magnus, his play was flawless. I was following it and I was seeing the action and all the lines that you guys were predicting, and the way Magnus was playing, I was checking it with the computer just every time the top move by the computer. Just absolutely insane how good this guy is. Of course, Liren had to take his chances in the opening and try and get a position which was uneven. And we all know, I think we've heard it from Magnus himself, this is a popular sort of a notion that we have, that to strike at the world champion or to have any chances, you've got to create a mess on the board. You know, if you go into strategical positions, if you go into positional battles, you don't have a great shot at that. Liren, from the very start, setting the tone that he knows what he has to do. But I think it was extremely rash, because at the end of it, if you play a position that has absolutely no sound positional strength to the tactics that are following or the mess that's on the board, I think Magnus is extremely strong in these situations as well, because he knows how to handle those complications. And we saw that in this game. I mean, just flawless play going into from a messy, super messy opening. I was talking with the Chess24 chat, and all of us were like, what is this opening? This is going over our heads, and, you know, just no understanding of what's happening. And then he converts it with keeping the slight edge throughout the game. He converts it into a very favorable rook pawn ending, and then just goes on to show how superior his technique is, which is again a great time to remind everybody that if you're having struggles with endgame technique, which is pretty much all of us here, right here, definitely check out the 20-minute free lesson by Magnus Carlsen on endgame play. And perhaps we're never going to be Magnus Carlsen, but we can definitely learn from the best and try and apply all his learnings and his experience in our own play. So check out that course, go to chessable.com, and it's a free lesson. It's a teaser for what's to come tomorrow, the big endgame course, the Magnus Touch. Like I said, we can't be Magnus, but we could have the Magnus Touch in our games. So check that out. And we also, I'm going to let Peter and Yas get a quick coffee break while we talk about what came up on Twitter before game 2 starts. A quick reminder, Ding Liren in a must-win situation, playing catch-up, not only in their sets, but also in the match today. Things could not have gone better for the world champion today, starting with 1-0 with the white pieces, really giving no chance to black whatsoever. Ding tried to create a mess out of the opening, but just ended up paying for the mess himself. Let's see what happens in game 2. But of course, yes, things are not looking good for Ding, to put it politely. Let's move on and see what you guys had to say on Twitter. We heard from Bipin, and Bipin says, Can anyone explain how the candidates for the various events were chosen? Confused on what basis were those chosen? Why no Fabi or Lev? Or Bipin, that's actually a great question. And this is, I think this entire tour has featured some of the best players in the world. And the selection process for this was pretty clear. So the first event, which was the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, the players were picked mostly, the 10 players that played that were picked mostly based on their world rankings, on their rapid rankings, on being the strongest in the world. And a certain Firouzja was picked because he's Firouzja, special talent. I mean, he had to be there. So apart from that, all the players were based on just being the best in the world. And of course, availability was taken into account. Now, after the Magnus Carlsen Invitational and picking these based mostly on ranking, and the next event and the events that followed, they were chosen. The top 4 finisher of the previous event directly qualified for the next event. So the top 4 semifinalists of the Invitational went on to play the Lindaris Abbey. The top 4 in the Lindaris went on to play the Chessable Masters. But also the 6 other players in the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, each of them was also given a wild card into one of the other events. So we had Fabi, who played in the Invitational. He did not make it to the semis, but was given a wild card for the Chessable Masters. Levon Aronian, but in both these events, the first and the Chessable Masters, Fabiano Caruana failed to come in the semis, so he did not advance in the tournament ahead. Levon also played the second event again, but did not reach the top 4. So that was a selection process. The whole tour started by just picking players who are the best in the world, and it continued by awarding the top 4 finishers in the previous event with a direct slot into the next event. And yeah, that's how it was done. Let's move on to the next one. We had Chess Master writing in, will Ding be able to repeat the sensation of the first day? Let's play this small clip that he sent us.
Anything. Doesn't need the win, just trades the bishops. Yeah, I mean, just absolutely picture perfect by Ding.
Yeah, flawless. Wow. Flawless Armageddon.
You can see the frustration on the world champion. This was after day 1, after he lost that match. He has not lost too many matches in this entire tour. Of course, he was sensationally knocked out by Hikaru Nakamura in the Lindaris Abbey Rapids semi-final. But besides that, it's been smooth sailing. And then here, when the stakes were really high, Magnus Carlsen started day 1 with losing his first set. And as could be seen, he had, he was not happy. But what a comeback by the world champion, winning 2 sets straight after that, wrapping up each set in 3 games. Today starts with a win. Will Ding be able to repeat the sensation of the first day? I want to say no. Let's move on to the Yas is smiling. Yas, what's your take?
Well, I mean, just a second time out. I mean, It's tough, everybody. I mean, come on. I mean, this is just not fair. If the guy plays a flawless game, how are you supposed to win? Tanya, you made a point that you were actually following the game with the chess engine, with the Chess24 chat, and you guys were kind of awestruck by Magnus's play. So I just got to ask you, where was the mistake that Ding made? Like, where did the computer go, oops, that was a fault? Because it wasn't like it was obvious to Peter or I that the position had deteriorated and was suddenly lost. I mean, it was like, bang. I mean, so where did the computer go, error?
I think, yes, it's just one of those openings that you play to take your opponent by surprise, but it is a very, in general, the foundations of the opening that Ding chose are extremely dubious, and Magnus just handled it really well. The engines never stopped giving a slightly better position to Magnus, especially after Black goes c3 with the trade-off and Queen b3, and he just never lost control. The point is that Magnus just did not make a mistake despite being thrown off in the opening, and he kept going at it, and at some point just converted into a very, very favorable endgame. Very difficult to point out the exact moment when things went completely wrong, but it was around the time when White played g4 that the advantage shifted in a big way. Also after g5 and this entire bishop e6, things looked great for White, and he just went on to convert it in style. The computers say that Black perhaps in this ending could have survived, but it was around the moment that Black played h4 and gave up this next pawn in the rook pawn ending that there was no coming back from it. Here, there are some suggestions like rook d5 against the idea of rook e5 check, which sort of can keep Black in the game for a little longer, but still White's doing great. And I think it was just a question of handling the opening really well and slowly just building up on that. And after h4, there was no looking back for Black. That's a dead lost ending. So that was the big mistake that he made. Let's get that last tweet up that we had. And we had Bakuz writing in with, thank you for the commentary, and to Yasser and Peter as well. Yes, there's a question for you. Are there any plans on creating courses on Chessable? Maybe for the French defense? I do know a certain Anish Giri who's making a course on the French. So yes, what about you?
Absolutely, no question about it. In fact, for the last couple of months, I've been taking a train up north from my home here in Hilversum, Holland, to Leeuwarden, where I've been at the Chessable Studios digitalizing these series of books behind me. I did this winning chess series of books. What happened? I don't know if you guys had the experience when you were at school. I'm in class and a kid comes in and says, the principal wants to talk to you. And I'm like, oh no, I've been busted. What did I do? I feel the statute of limitations runs out after 24 hours as a kid. If I don't get busted right away, I'm good. So I go to the principal's office and he says, it's my understanding, Yasser, that you're really good at chess. I go, no, I'm really not. I'm not that good. Yeah, you are. I want you to teach chess in school as a curriculum. I went, what? I'm going to be the teacher? He goes, yeah. I said, I get to give my classmates a score, a grade? He goes, yeah. He says, I said, I'm going to give them an A. They go, if they're good students, they deserve an A. I go, and I can give myself a score? He goes, yeah. I said, I'm going to give myself an A. He says, you'll probably deserve it. I said, this is great, done deal. So I became a chess teacher as a student, while a student myself in junior high. And as I started teaching the class, I started with 7 kids, and we ended up with 42. Okay, they all got A, by the way. And I really, really regretted that I didn't have a curriculum that I could just teach from. In those days, it just wasn't there. So I started my own chess course. And later in the 90s, Microsoft came to me, Microsoft Press at the time, and said, could you do a chess educational series for us? And I go, yeah, I got it. They go, okay. And so those books became a winning chess series. And now today, everything is digitalization, right? And Chessable with its move trainer, its pattern recognition move trainer, as well as all of the, I want to say, AIs that go with the Chessable courses. Marrying the content to the AI of today is just fabulous. And I've started with winning chess strategies, and then it's going to be winning chess tactics and winning chess combinations. And I think those three first books of the series, we're going to hold our breath and see if they're well received by the public. And if they are, we're going to do a lot more.
Yes, I have no idea that anything that you put out there is going to be amazingly received. You are not only a commentator extraordinaire, but also a trainer, and your courses and just the way you explain is absolutely magnificent. It's going to be gobbled up. So we can't wait for your series. Also, we heard from the chat, a little complaining going on from the Chess24 chat. We had Calvina Mari writing in, moronic tweets get 20% of the time and premium member chats get 0% of the time. Calvina Mari, I hear you. Here you are. I am on the chat. I'm keeping an eye out. We definitely want to make the chat a part of the show. I'm going to try and do a better job at that. But see, we get some of the chats on the show as well. And now before we have liftoff of the next game, let's take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
Welcome back. We do have liftoff of game 2. Ding Liren playing catch up after game 1. Let's hand it over to Yas and Peter to take us through the action.
Thank you, Tanya. And we do indeed have liftoff game 2. Ding Liren, Peter, has decided to give E2, E4 a rest, and he's gone back to his, let's say, tried and true style of D4s and C4, made him the number 3 player in the world. Do you approve, Peter?
Yeah, I approve completely. I just feel like it's pity that when he's now returning to his main weapon, he is already trailing today. Yeah, it adds to the pressure. And Magnus surprisingly took some time, something like 30 seconds for his second move, and finally opted for G6. And we are seeing now the G3 Grunfeld or the G3 King's Indian, depending on which setup Magnus will choose. It's already not the first time if we will get the G3 King's Indian in their match, because from the Reti move order yesterday we already had that. Interesting how it will develop.
Exactly, and that was the line that kind of went like knight c3, d6, knight f3, c6, and then you were explaining why to your student you had recommended the move e2, e4.
Yeah, it seems like you are very well prepared now, Yasser. Yeah. I mean,
well, no, I've been soaking up all your knowledge, Peter. I feel like I want to play.
Yeah, but Magnus is not giving Ding a chance to come up with c6, e4, and Magnus goes knight c6 just as he did. No, not just as he did against me, because against me it was c5, castles, knight c6. That was the line. Actually, he used to play. He had a couple of games with it earlier on, but I don't recall him playing knight c6, short castles, e5. I remember that he played it from the white side. He won against Firuza, in St. Petersburg Blitz World Championship. It was a stunning game because Firuza had a fantastic event. He was fighting against all the very best players, and then finally he gets the chance on board one to face Magnus Carlsen. And I was there as a co-commentator with Miro, Yevgeny Miroshnichenko, and we were kind of discussing, it will be very interesting to see how Magnus will deal with Alireza, because the very young promising talent and so on. It will be probably a very sharp game. And Magnus just demolished Firuza in a beautiful strategical manner. Firuza never got into the game, and there Magnus had the white pieces. And now suddenly he's on the black side.
Exactly. And it's very, very surprising to me because Ding Liren has a justified reputation as a fearsome King's Indian defense player himself. So oftentimes when you're playing against a person who's a great expert in the Grunfeld, for example, it's not a very good idea to play the Grunfeld against a Grunfeld expert, because that player knows exactly where the Grunfeld can get targeted. And here he is, he's playing a King's Indian against a King's Indian defense player. It's like, is Magnus purposefully challenging himself? He wants to play the world's best, and he's not afraid to play in their sand lot as well.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm completely surprised, shocked. I even don't know how to put it. I would have never ever imagined Magnus choosing this exact setup. But to be fair, this knight c6 e5 is a relatively modern approach, because it became really popular once people discovered that d5 is actually answered very nicely by knight b8 followed by a5, and black had very, very nice results with it. And for this fact, the move d takes e5 became the main move in this position, and this is exactly how Magnus reacted against Firuza. So it's somewhat surprising that Ding went d5 and Magnus blitzed out knight e7, because I don't really believe that there is any real modern theory in it. I don't recall any real games played in this exact variation.
And after knight e7, the move e2, e4, a nice move reinforcing the center and kind of controlling the knight on e7. It can't jump to f5 for whatever reasons. And then comes, from White's point of view, the very natural idea of expanding on the queen side. In principle, as White, you want to play moves like knight e1, knight d3, b4, c5, or simply b4, c5. And in any case, you're trying to get in that break, and black, which explains why Magnus has played the move a7, a5, because he's trying to slow down White, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should point out that, it would be simply strategically premature for White to go b4 immediately, because exactly that's what black is waiting for, to strike it with a5. And due to the fact that White is not able to play a3 because of the pin along the a file, this exactly explains why White takes prophylactic measures, plays first rook b1. Now White does want to go b4, so Magnus doesn't give him the chance. He goes a5, and now White plays the somewhat surprising move rook e1, but I think there is an explanation, because he needs to protect this e4 pawn, because I'm not that experienced with the arrows, and I wanted to highlight the e4 pawn, that this pawn needs some extra protection. There was nothing on this diagonal, and rook e1, because just as you said, the old classical way of thinking about this position would be that this knight on f3 is somewhat misplaced. Let's bring it to d3 where it belongs,
Right.
But probably, simply again, it's my respect towards the players, and I'm pretty sure that they are big experts in this position. Ding must have known that now it's probably better to play rook e1 than knight e1.
And I don't disagree in terms of respect for the players, but I have an audience. We have an audience, and they want to know why White didn't play a3 and b4, Peter.
Yes, that would be the very natural question, but exactly here I think we get an answer for it, why White played the move rook e1, because after a3 suddenly black has this very annoying move e5, a4, and you better take this pawn, but you can't because your pawn on e4 is hanging. And if you are not taking now, you try to support the e4 pawn, then black will just simply protect his a4 pawn, and you will never ever manage to get this b4 play, and then you are strategically busted on the queen side.
And that's the answer as to why why Ding Liren played rook e1. He does want to play b4. He really, really, really does. But he doesn't want to allow this a4 trick that Peter just pointed out. Very nice. Thank you for that, Peter. And we have, after rook e1, knight to d7. Okay, this is a very common theme in the King's Indian as Black needs activity. He's getting suffocated by the space of the pawn on d5. He wants to break out with f7, f5, Peter.
Yes, but exactly for this reason also we see that the knight on f3 actually is stupid at the moment, but at the exact minute black goes f5, white suddenly will have the opportunity to jump with the knight to g5 and head towards the weakened e6 square. So this is probably one of the other that's the deeper idea, because just protecting the e4 pawn and preparing a3 was kind of easy to understand, but this is another aspect. And I was wondering that after Magnus had won this first game today, that what has to happen in order that Ding has a chance to get back. And I cannot imagine any other scenario for Ding than exactly this position, because it suits his style. He knows all the ideas. It's not move per move. He can just play some really nice strategical game according to his style. And Magnus is also not such an expert in this position. So in this regard, I really don't understand why Magnus voluntarily chose to enter this variation.
And just your explanation, Peter, forcibly reminded me of what you said yesterday in one of those Sicilian games, the Najdorf Sicilian, where bishop takes a3 and Magnus crashed through brilliantly on the queen side. And it was sort of like the move knight b3 did not come naturally to Ding Liren because he spent more of his life learning the Catalan and the King's Indian, and his instincts are there. So right here, now he's in a game where he, as you just very well put it, he knows the ideas, he knows the themes, he knows even the tactics as well as the end games that come from this. So he really is playing in his territory, if I can use that term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he has the bishop on g2. One can argue that, okay, what do you do with this bishop? I mean, this bishop is locked. Yes, it's perfectly true. But all the ideas still remain kind of the same. And also, it's not the typical King's Indian position from the black side, because white is very stable. All this, it's not like black gets all the chances, all the freedom on the king side to attack, and white has everything going on the queen side, and who will be first with his attack. I mean, this is much more strategic, and I believe that somehow this should be exactly the scenario that Ding is looking forward to. But I mean, I'm pretty sure that Magnus has his own agenda. I mean, Magnus wants to get into the finals, and by no means he's trying to make his pet as